Zirith had never been to a human space station before. The moment she stepped through the docking bay, her alien senses were flooded with colors, sounds and smells she had never experienced. Humans moved quickly around her, carrying tools, talking in their strange flowing language, and laughing in ways that felt strange but pleasant. Her mission was simple: to study human technology for her people, not their emotions. Yet from the first step she took, she felt something in the air, something warm and alive that her species did not understand. Zirith was tall, her skin smooth and pale blue, her eyes large and silver, designed to see in low light. She wore the simple gray uniform of an alien researcher, with a small datapad hanging from her belt. Her species, the Xylarans, valued logic, science, and efficiency. They did not waste time with unnecessary conversation or physical contact. To them, emotions were distractions, and closeness between people was something primitive. But humans were different, and Zirith was about to see just how different. She wandered through the main corridor of the station, glancing into rooms and observation decks. The walls hummed softly with the sound of power running through hidden wires. Doors opened with a quiet hiss as people moved from one area to another. Her translator device picked up fragments of human speech, turning them into sharp, simple words in her mind. Some of the words meant nothing to her, and others carried strange feelings she could not explain. Turning a corner, Zirith noticed a half-open door at the end of the hall. It was not on her scheduled list of places to visit, but curiosity pulled her closer. She looked around. No one was watching, and she stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by the soft blue glow of a large window showing the stars outside. Two humans stood near the center of the room, close enough that their shoulders touched. They were not speaking, yet something powerful seemed to pass between them. One of them reached up and gently touched the other's face. It was such a small movement, yet it made Zirith's breath catch in her throat. Her species never touched like that. They shook hands for agreements, exchanged objects, and occasionally linked arms during formal greetings. But this was different. She felt heat rising in her own chest, as if her body was reacting to something she did not understand. The humans were looking into each other's eyes, holding that gaze as if the rest of the universe had disappeared. It was quiet, yet it felt like the air itself was vibrating with energy. Her datapad was recording automatically, but she knew no numbers or graphs could explain what she was witnessing. The human male smiled, his face softening, and the female smiled back in a way that seemed to fill the space with light. Then they stepped even closer, and the energy between them grew stronger. Zirith's silver eyes widened as she realized they were about to embrace. When their arms wrapped around each other, she felt a strange rush in her mind, like a wave crashing into her thoughts. Her fingers twitched as if she wanted to reach out too, but she stayed perfectly still, hidden in the shadows in that moment. Zirith knew she was seeing something that her people had no word for. It was not about survival, not about duty, not about science. It was something deeper, something raw. Her species had studied human strength in battle, their speed, their inventions. But no one had studied this, the invisible bond that made two people hold each other as if it was the only thing keeping them alive. The embrace lasted only seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. When they finally stepped apart, they spoke in low voices, their words soft and gentle. Zirith's translator caught fragments. Missed you. Safe now. Together. And each word hit her like a spark. She backed away quietly, her mind racing. She had come here to study machines, but now she wanted to study humans themselves. She needed to know what she had just witnessed. Why did it feel so powerful? Why did it make her own chest ache with a strange longing she had never felt before? As she slipped out of the room, she glanced one last time at the two humans. They were still standing close, still looking at each other as if nothing else mattered. Her datapad beeped softly, confirming it had saved the recording. But Zirith knew this was more than just data. This was a mystery, and she was determined to solve it, even if it meant breaking the rules of her mission. even if it meant risking everything. That night, as the station's lights dimmed to simulate human night cycles, Zirith sat in her small quarters, replaying the scene in her mind. Her thoughts were full of questions and strange feelings she could not name. Her people believed emotions were weakness, but if this was weakness, then why did it feel so strong? She could not sleep, and somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, Zirith could not focus on her assigned research. Her orders were clear: study the human engine cores, the navigation systems, and the supply management process. But all she could think about was the quiet moment she had witnessed between the two humans. It played again and again in her mind like a loop she could not stop. She had seen battles, explosions, and dangerous storms in space. But nothing had shaken her the way that simple touch had. Her people, the Xylarans, considered curiosity a strength when applied to science. But when it came to emotions, curiosity was seen as dangerous. Feelings could distract the mind, make one act irrationally, even break discipline, yet Zirith could not stop herself. Something inside her demanded answers. And so she began her own secret mission. Every time she passed through the station's common areas, she slowed her pace. She started watching the humans closely, not just their actions, but the way they reacted to each other. In the dining hall, she saw a human place a plate of food in front of another, without a word. The receiver smiled in gratitude, and Zirith felt a strange warmth in her chest. In the engineering bay, she noticed two humans working side by side, their shoulders brushing now and then. Neither seemed to mind, and sometimes they laughed quietly together. In her culture, personal space was sacred. But here, closeness seemed natural, even comforting. She began writing secret notes in her datapad. She labeled it Project 91, Human Bonding Behavior. Her entries described small gestures, eye contact, hand touches, leaning closer while speaking. At first, she thought these were just habits, but the more she watched, the more she felt there was something deeper, something invisible connecting them. A silent language her species had never learned. One evening, while walking back to her quarters, Zirith overheard voices coming from a side corridor. She slowed, her ears focusing on the soft tone. A male voice whispered, "Don't worry. I'll be here when you wake up," a female voice replied. "I know. I don't want to lose you again." The words pierced through her like an electric charge. There was no logic, no calculation, and yet, those words carried more power than any order or command she had ever heard. Zirith leaned against the wall. Her mind racing, she realized something. Human intimacy was not only about physical contact. It was in their words, their promises, their shared fears. It was a force that bound them, even when they were apart. She wondered if such a force could exist between other species, or was it something uniquely human? That night, she stayed awake again, staring at the ceiling of her quarters. Her official mission logs were filled with reports on ship structure and technology, but her secret file was filling faster than anything else. She knew that if her superiors discovered this research, they might order her to delete it. They might even remove her from the mission entirely. But she could not stop. The need to understand was too strong. She had crossed the first line of her people's unspoken rule. She was studying something they feared. From that moment, she made a decision. She would not just observe from a distance. She would ask directly, even if the question made humans uncomfortable, even if it risked her standing on the station. She needed the truth, and she knew exactly who she would ask first. Zirith waited for the right moment. She knew Commander Lewis was the human who seemed to have the respect of everyone on the station. He was calm, direct, and rarely wasted words. If anyone could explain the mystery of human closeness, it would be him, but she also knew that asking him would be risky. Her people considered such questions too personal, almost invasive. She found him in the observation deck late in the evening. The stars stretched endlessly outside the large window. Lewis stood with his hands behind his back, staring out at the cosmos. at the stars stretched endlessly outside the large window. Darkness between the glowing points of light. Zereth stepped closer, her boots making a soft sound on the metal floor. "Commander Lewis," she said, her voice steady but her heart beating fast. He turned, his expression neutral. "Yes, researcher." "Zereth?" For a moment, she hesitated. Her mind reminded her that this could be a mistake. But the image of the two humans in the dim room returned to her mind. She had to know. She tilted her head slightly. Her silver eyes focused on him. Why do humans hold each other like that? Why do they touch faces, lean close, and share words in soft tones? What purpose does it serve? Lewis blinked, clearly taken off guard. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in surprise. "That's a very personal question," he said slowly. "In my culture, it is not personal," Zereth replied. "It is observation." He studied her for a moment, as if trying to decide whether she was serious. Finally, he gave a small breath of disbelief. "You really don't know." Zereth's tone was firm. "I want to know, Commander." Lewis looked away for a second, his gaze returning to the stars. "It's called intimacy," he said quietly. "It's how we connect deeply with someone we care about." Her translator repeated the word in her own language, but it had no direct meaning. "Connect? How does touching make a connection?" she asked. He gave a short laugh, not mocking but almost amazed. "It's not just the touch, Zereth. It's everything. The trust, the comfort, the feeling that you're not alone." Her mind struggled to process it. Her people connected through shared work, through survival, through coordinated tasks. But this sounded different, something not for survival, but for the soul. "Can you show me?" she asked suddenly. Lewis's head turned sharply toward her. Her request hung in the air like static before a storm. "That's complicated," he said, his voice low. "Is it dangerous?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not dangerous. Just private." She stepped closer. "I will keep it private." For a moment, he simply studied her face. There was a long silence, broken only by the faint hum of the station systems. Finally, Lewis spoke. "All right, Zereth. But you have to promise you'll respect what you see." "I promise," she said without hesitation. "Then meet me here tomorrow, same time," he said, turning back toward the stars. "What will you show me?" she asked. He gave a faint smile, one corner of his mouth lifting. "You'll see." As Zereth walked away from the deck, her heart pounded in a way she had never felt before. She was not afraid, but she was not calm either. It was something in between, a restless anticipation. Tomorrow, she would see a human demonstration of this intimacy, and she had no idea how much it would change her. The next evening, Zereth arrived early at the observation deck. She stood by the massive window, watching distant suns glimmer in the black sea of space. Her silver eyes reflected the starlight, but her mind was restless. She kept wondering what the human commander planned to show her, and why it required secrecy. The sound of approaching footsteps made her turn. Commander Lewis entered, carrying a small black case in one hand. He set it on the table in the corner, unlocking it with a quiet click. Inside were a few objects: a folded blanket, a metal flask, and something that looked like a thin, flat device. Zereth tilted her head, confused. "This is not technology," she said softly. "No," Lewis replied. "It's something better." He placed the blanket on the floor near the window. The stars shone above them like silent witnesses. "Sit," he told her, and she obeyed, folding her long legs neatly. He poured 2 cups from the flask. The scent was warm and sweet. "It's hot chocolate," he explained. "A comfort." "Drink." She took it carefully, the warmth seeping into her fingers. In her culture, sharing food or drink was purely practical. Here, it felt like an invitation. For a moment, they sat in silence, sipping slowly. Then Lewis placed the flat device between them. Pressing a button, a soft melody began to play, slow, gentle, almost like a heartbeat. Zereth blinked, her ears adjusting to the unfamiliar rhythm. "This is music," Lewis said quietly. "Humans use it to create emotion, to share feelings." Without words, she listened, feeling something stir inside her chest. The sound seemed to reach places her logical mind had never touched. Then Lewis shifted closer. "I told you intimacy isn't just about touch," he said. "It's about making another person feel safe, feel seen, feel valued." He reached out his hand, palm open, waiting. Zirith hesitated, her instincts warning her that this was crossing a boundary, but her curiosity won, and she placed her slender blue hand into his. The warmth of his skin was startling, not heat from a machine, but heat from life itself. Lewis's fingers closed gently around hers. He didn't pull, didn't force, just held her hand as if it was the most natural thing in the universe. Her heart rate increased, her breathing slow but deep. Her senses picked up the faint scent of his skin, the steady beat of his pulse. And something happened. Her own heartbeat began to match his rhythm. She realized she was syncing with him, as if an invisible bridge connected them. "This is why we touch," Lewis said softly, "to remind each other that we're not alone." Zirith's throat felt tight, her voice barely above a whisper. "In my world, we don't do this," she admitted. "Maybe that's why you don't understand us fully yet," he replied. They sat like that for a long time, the stars watching silently beyond the glass. Finally, Lewis released her hand and leaned back. "That's just a small part of what we call intimacy," he said. "There's more, much more, but it's not something you learn in one night." Zirith's mind was spinning. Her datapad could not record the strange warmth in her chest. Her science could not measure the way the music and touch had changed her. She knew this was dangerous, not because it harmed her, but because it made her want more. As she left the observation deck that night, her steps felt lighter, but her thoughts were heavier. She realized she was no longer just studying humans, she was beginning to feel like one. In the days that followed, Zirith could not hide the change in her. She moved differently, slower in some moments, more thoughtful in others. Her fellow Xyleran researchers noticed, their silver eyes narrowing whenever she lingered around humans. They whispered to each other in their own language, using words that carried warning tones. To them, it was clear, Zirith was stepping into dangerous territory. One afternoon, as she was recording data in the engineering bay, her colleague Voron approached, his voice sharp and cold. "You spend too much time with them," he said. Zirith kept her focus on the console. Pretending not to understand, Voron stepped closer, lowering his tone. "They are unpredictable, emotional, and undisciplined. And now you are starting to act like them." Zirith felt a flicker of irritation. "I am studying them," she replied calmly. "You are absorbing them." Voron shot back. He leaned in, his voice almost a hiss. "Our kind has survived for centuries by avoiding such weakness." But in her mind, the word weakness no longer matched what she had seen. Later that day, she entered the station's central hub and noticed something unusual. A group of humans and Xylerans were gathered, their voices low, their expressions serious. As she approached, the conversation stopped. A Xyleran council member turned to her, his tall frame casting a shadow over her. "Researcher Zirith," he said in a formal tone, "there are concerns about your behavior." She met his gaze without flinching. "What concerns?" she asked. "You are crossing into areas that are not part of your mission," he replied. "You are engaging in private human customs without authorization." A murmur ran through the small crowd. Zirith's chest tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "My mission is to understand humans, and this is part of who they are." The council member's silver eyes narrowed. "It is not necessary to understand this part," he said firmly. "It is unnecessary and dangerous." The humans standing nearby exchanged looks. Some seemed confused. Others seemed defensive on her behalf. Commander Lewis stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying weight. "She's not harming anyone," he said. "She's learning." But the council member's gaze stayed on Zirith. "You will end this study immediately," he ordered. Zirith felt the weight of the command pressing down on her. Her training told her to obey, to avoid conflict, but something inside her, something new, refused to back down. "No," she said simply. The room went silent. Even Lewis looked at her with surprise. "You will regret defying the council," the elder Xylerin warned. "Perhaps," Zirith replied. "But if understanding them is a crime, then I will break the law." Gasps spread through the gathering. Zirith turned and walked away, her steps firm. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was clear. She knew there would be consequences. She also knew she could not stop. She had crossed the line completely, and there was no turning back. That night, she sat alone in her quarters. The station felt quieter than usual. Her data pad glowed softly, the latest entries on human intimacy filling its screen. She replayed the music from that night with Lewis, letting the sound wrap around her like a shield. If her own people wanted to call this dangerous, then perhaps danger was worth facing. The warning from the Xylerin Council did not slow Zirith. If anything, it made her more determined. She knew observation was no longer enough. If she wanted to truly understand human intimacy, she would have to experience it herself, not from a distance, not through recordings, but directly. One evening, she found Commander Lewis in the training hall. He was alone, running a maintenance check on some equipment. Zirith stepped inside, her voice low but steady. "Commander, I want you to show me more," she said. Lewis paused, his hand stopping mid-motion. "More?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," she replied, "not as an observer, but as a participant." His expression shifted between curiosity and concern. "You know what you're asking is not part of your mission," he said. "I know," she replied. "But this is bigger than a mission." Lewis studied her for a long moment. Then he placed the tool on the bench and nodded slowly. "All right. But you have to trust me completely." "I do," she answered without hesitation. He led her to a smaller, private room within the hall. The lights were dim, the walls lined with soft padding to absorb sound. "This is where some of us come to reconnect," he explained. Zirith felt her pulse quicken. She had no idea what would happen next, but she refused to look away. Lewis stepped closer, his voice calm. "I'm going to teach you something humans call a bonding ritual. It doesn't require words, only presence and trust." He extended his hands, palms open. Zirith slowly placed her blue hands into his. The warmth was immediate, flowing from his skin into hers like a gentle current. He guided her to stand closer until there was barely any space between them. "Close your eyes," he said softly. She obeyed, her silver eyelids lowering. "Now, breathe with me." She listened to the steady rhythm of his breathing and matched it. At first, it felt awkward, but then something shifted. Her chest rose and fell in perfect sync with his. Their heartbeats seemed to fall into the same rhythm. It was as if her body was learning a language she had never known existed. Lewis's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "This is how we align with someone. It's not about control, it's about trust. When two people breathe together, they create a shared space that belongs only to them." Zirith felt the truth of his words in her bones. The air between them seemed charged, heavy with meaning. After several minutes, Lewis opened his eyes. "You're doing well," he said. Zirith opened hers. Meeting his gaze, in that moment, she understood. This was not weakness. This was strength of a different kind. The kind that could hold someone together when the universe tried to tear them apart. But their moment was suddenly broken by a sharp sound. The door slid open, and Vorin stood there, his silver eyes wide with shock. "What is this?" he demanded. Lewis stepped slightly in front of Zirith, his tone protective. "This is none of your concern," he said firmly. "It is all of my concern." Vorin replied, "You are changing her, making her one of you." Zirith stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. "No, Vorin. I am making myself something new." Vorin's eyes narrowed. "You are playing with dangerous bonds," he warned. "Maybe," Zirith replied. "But I have never felt more alive." Vorin left without another word. The door closed, leaving silence in his wake. Lewis looked at her with a mix of pride and caution. "You know this will not end here," he said. "I know," she replied, "and I don't want it to." The next day, the Xyleran Council summoned Xerath. The message was clear. She was to report to the central chamber immediately. Her steps echoed through the metallic corridors as she walked. Humans and Xylerans alike turned to watch her, some with curiosity, some with suspicion. She could feel the weight of every gaze, but she did not lower her head. The chamber was filled when she arrived. High-ranking Xylerans sat in a curved line, their silver eyes cold and unblinking. Several human officers, including Commander Lewis, stood to one side. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Xerath stepped forward to stand in the center, her heart steady. "Researcher Xerath," the lead council member began, "you have violated mission protocol, engaged in unauthorized contact, and defied direct orders." Her voice was sharp, each word cutting like a blade. "You leave us no choice but to remove you from this station." Xerath felt the expected sting of exile, but she also felt something else, a deep certainty that she could not leave without speaking the truth. "If that is your decision," she said calmly, "then I accept it. But before I go, you will hear what I have learned." The council exchanged uneasy glances. Lewis watched her with quiet support. Xerath's voice carried across the chamber, clear and unwavering. "You think human intimacy is weakness," she began. "You see their closeness, their touch, their words, and you believe it distracts them from their duty. But you are wrong." She turned her gaze toward both species. "I have seen humans face fear not because they are fearless, but because they have someone to fight for. I have seen them hold each other when the universe felt too big, too empty, and in those moments, they found strength no weapon can give." Her silver eyes shone in the dim light. This is not weakness, it is their greatest power." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some Xylerans shifted uncomfortably. Others stared in silent thought. Lewis took a slow step forward, as if to stand with her. Xerath continued, her voice steady. "If our species could learn even a fraction of this, we would be stronger together than apart. It is not their ships or their weapons that make them survive. It is this bond, invisible, but unbreakable." The lead council member's eyes hardened. "You speak dangerously, Xerath," she said. "Perhaps," Xerath replied, "but truth is often dangerous." There was no more discussion. The council declared her exile, and she was ordered to leave the station within the next cycle. As she turned to go, Lewis met her at the exit. He did not speak. He simply placed his hand over hers, a silent promise. Her chest tightened, but she managed a small smile. Without another word, she walked down the corridor toward the docking bay. When her shuttle left the station, the stars stretched endlessly. Ahead, she felt no fear, only a strange sense of peace, because she carried something her people could never take from her, a truth that would live in her forever, that the most powerful force in the universe was not fire or steel, it was the human heart.